Yo, what's going on everybody? It's your boy Naruto Explain here, bringing you guys the long-awaited review for the first episode of the Kara Actuation Arc, Boruto episode 157. And I gotta say, this was very much worth the wait, man. This was very much worth the wait. After going through so many transitional episodes and seemingly never raising the stakes in a lot of these episodes, we're finally getting into the meat and potatoes of what's essentially leading you into the Boruto manga portion of the story. And so I gotta say right away, right? I gotta address the ending, because I know a lot of people are like, oh my god, Kara, they got introduced at the very end. Does this mean that we're finally out the prologue? No, we're not out the prologue yet. I want to go ahead and get this put on the table now. I said, and myself and others have said, once Kara shows up in the anime, there's gonna be a tonal shift. This episode was a tonal shift, but we're still in the prologue until Kara actually starts meeting and talking about their vessel. And that's all I'm gonna say, because I don't want to spoil the anime onlys, but until they start meeting in regards to the vessel, we're still in the prologue. So yes, we saw Kara meet, but the whole purpose of this arc that we're getting right now is that we're going to be getting information that fleshes out the true danger of the Kara organization. So I gotta say, I think that they definitely did a really good job here, because the fact of the matter is that we see that Sasuke and Sai were in the company of an outer member the whole time this episode, and they didn't even realize it. Like, they knew that this kid had some ties to Kara, but they weren't sure what his role was. And I want you guys to take into account the thing that Sasuke said in this episode. Sasuke, after he is done with Sai on this mission, he tells Sai this wasn't a complete waste right here. And the reason why Sasuke is saying that is that he says, well, when it comes to Kara, we know that they have sympathizers. And Sasuke tells him very correctly that that is true. And I want to kind of point you guys to some stuff that Kodachi has said in the past. I've covered in other videos. Kara's stretch runs very deep, and Naruto and Shikamaru immediately catch on to that. And they say in the episode, they say that Kara's a lot bigger than what we thought. See, more than likely, Naruto and them probably thought this was a small group like the Akatsuki. The Akatsuki is a very small, close-knit organization, whereas Kara runs very, very deep. They have very influential peoples. In some cases, in some nations, they're on the council that advises the feudal lord. So that's why these outer members are just as dangerous as the inner members, even though they're not as powerful. Look at this shinobi that Sasuke and Sai were dealing with in this episode. This wasn't anybody super advanced with ninjutsu. He couldn't tell the difference with a clone jutsu, and yet at the same time, look at how far and how cleverly he was able to deceive Sasuke and Sai. Even though they saw through the deception, it was still one of those things to where they wanted to get intel on what was in that lab, and yet they couldn't do it. And the guy believed in the Kara message so much that he was willing to kill himself. Like, this is what I love about this organization. I highly recommend, if you've not seen my Kara Explain video, I highly recommend checking that out. Now, I do gotta say this. I did like the fact that, you know, Sai's team was brought into the beginning of the episode, and so it's paying off. If I'm not mistaken, the very first Boruto anime review that I did on this channel, where I talked about in that episode, I said, hey, you know, they have skill sets that can work with Sai when it comes to Yanbu. I'm going to be very interested to see how this team actually develops under Sai, and we see it here. Sai even tells him, he says, you guys have done a better job than the other Anbu teams out there. So we're seeing here that this generation right here that Sai is working with, this team, they're very, very talented. They have a very untapped potential here, and between them and the team that Ibiki has, I'm going to be very interested to watch their future development, because we could be seeing the formation of a new elite Anbu group. So that's going to be interesting, especially given the current events of the manga. When the anime gets to this, how this team, what their direction in the future is going to be. So I like the fact that we are having the first footprints of Kara being in the Hidden Rain Village. And I think that, you know, part of the reason why they chose the Hidden Rain Village here is because they wanted to give the anime fans some familiarity, if you will. watching the episode, you think, oh, this is in the Hidden Rain Village. Oh, they're in the Akatsuki's old hideout. And if you look at the structures, a lot of those structures in that industrial district, they all look the same. And so it makes you think that this could potentially be the hideout that the Akatsuki wants to use. But the fact of the matter is that I don't think that this is the same thing, though. I do think that we did see part of that area where Jiraiya was fighting Pain. So that was kind of cool to see that. And the reason why the symbolism in them starting in the Hidden Rain Village is so huge is that this is a village that is still recovering from past wars. And what's so beautiful about that is that it's in these areas where you can truly find people who are going to be willing to give into despair. When people give into despair, when they're desperate, that allows you to manipulate them. And so this is a prime candidate for an outer member. And I think that for the manga fans, there's a certain outer member who had ties to the Fourth Great Ninja War that when you look at the circumstances, you can see what I mean by certain characters when they're in a sense of despair and desperation, they'll pledge allegiance to just about anybody. And so I like how they're even setting up foreshadowing for that. Now, they did adapt some stuff from the manga, which was that scene where Shikamaru tells Naruto that Katasuke was essentially being brainwashed and that his actions weren't of his own. And so that right there, that was directly taken from the manga, so that was nice to see that. And they're setting up Katasuke for a future arc that's going to be happening more than likely after this, so this is nice to see this little tidbit here. Now, what I also have to kind of point out is that there was another Easter egg in this episode to something that happens in the manga. So I'm just gonna say for the anime only fans that those biological experiments that Kara is doing, that's very important. And in particular, that area that has like those tubes and everything, if you go back to the anime opening, you can actually get a glimpse into what's actually taking place there. Just go back and watch the opening for Boruto, and when you get to the babies that are in those test tubes and the human beings in those test tubes, that's what you're seeing there. So that's gonna be very interesting. You're not really gonna understand what's going on until it fully gets revealed, but that gives you an idea of how to get the wheels starting to turn here. So I thought that that was interesting. I thought that Garashi's backstory, I thought that there was some truth in there. So this kind of goes back to the thing I tell people in the manga, in particular with a certain character that's narrating a lot of information in the manga right now, is, you know, you also have to look at the reliability of the narrator. Just because the character's saying it does not mean that it's true, or does not mean that it's completely true. There's an aspect to where you give some information in order to deceive the reader. That way you can pull a plot twist later on. And so when you look at this right here, Garashi's story, I do think that he was taken in and taught ninjutsu, but I don't think the full circumstances were the truth. And given that we know that Kara was, and this is some information that's going to come up later on, but given that Kara does take human beings and they take them for experiment purposes for a reason that has not been revealed yet, in the anime at least, I do think that this person's job, this Garashi's job, was to essentially be a human runner. So just how you have the traffickers who target children and women in the real world, and they send them into sex trades and everything, this is gonna be kind of the same thing here, only obviously they're not being used for sexual reasons, but they're being used for experimentation reasons. So I thought that that was cool right there. And I like how when they're walking into that cave and you have this moment where he releases the rat, that's that first sign that this character was not everything that he was pretending to be, because he had too good of a layout of the area. And I like how Sai has that unreadable expression, but you know, there's a moment when they're walking that Sasuke, after Sai says, do you know all of these tunnels, and he's explaining why he knows it, there's a moment where Sasuke, you can see his eyes narrow for a second. And I like how Sasuke pretty much just resists the urge to just jack this dude up by his collar and basically throw him up against the wall and start questioning right there, because Sasuke's got a very subtle sense to him. But Sasuke, as he's looking at him, you can just tell, like, the camera even focuses in on Sasuke's expression, because Sasuke's looking at it like, I don't believe this guy. So I like that you see that moment right there. And I like how when Sasuke sees the boulder, he activates his Sharingan and immediately uses the Chidori, and you see how Garashi's running after his teammates, but he's running so fast that Sasuke and Sai, they're keeping up, and you're thinking like, okay, well, maybe this is going to be the case. Maybe he actually did lose his teammates, but the foreshadowing was already there. The foreshadowing that Sasuke had already figured out that this guy was somebody who was lying to them or withholding information. Sasuke, even though he and Sai are running, the wheels are already turning there. And I like how they get to this entrance and Sasuke and Sai hesitate for a second. So that was our clue that they sent clones in, because they hesitated before they went in. So I like that you actually see that, and they do a good job when it comes to misdirection, because for a second they make you believe that Sasuke and Sai, they got caught in all these kunai and all of these wire trappings, and as the poison's going through, the first sign that you should have known that wasn't Sasuke was that Sasuke was coughing up blood. And the reason why you should know that is, I know that there are a bunch of new fans who have not read the Naruto manga, and we have new fans who have not seen every episode of Naruto and Naruto Shippuden. So that's why I tell you guys, like, it's cool that you're jumping into Boruto, and it's cool you want to learn the previous information, but there's gonna be scenes like this that go completely over your head if you're not at least going back and looking at all the stuff that takes place before the actual fights. Because a lot of people, they just watch the highlights of the fights and they think, oh, I'm caught up. There's a lot of context in the Naruto universe that the Boruto anime deals with in specifics that if you don't know it, it goes over your head. So with Sasuke during his time with Orochimaru, Sasuke became immune to poison. Most known poisons Sasuke's immune to. It has to be something very potent that Sasuke's body has not been exposed to where Sasuke's body can't fight it off, because Orochimaru experimented on Sasuke as well as trained him. So that's one of those things right there. As soon as Sasuke began coughing up blood, you know, I had two reactions in my head. The first reaction was, oh man, anybody that's read the manga is going to call absolute BS on this, because there's no way that this kid came up with poison that potent to where Sasuke, somebody who was experimented on by Orochimaru, was going to be coughing up blood. But then on the other hand, I'm like, wait a second, like, what if they're giving us clear misdirection and the people that are anime fans are going to be ones deceived by this? And sure enough, that's exactly what happens. But what the huge plot twist in all this was is that Garashi has that mask on, and Garashi ends up getting poisoned by the very same poison, and Sasuke even says it. Sasuke says that mask was not used to protect you, and so every time he was putting that mask on, he was killing himself. And that's the thing about outer members in Kara, is that they're essentially just pawns for the inner members. They're pawns. They can be disposed of at any time. We've seen it in the manga where one member basically gets sent to his death to capture a character that Kara wants. Another member was outright assassinated for failing a mission, and now in this case, this character was being poisoned. That way, once his role had ended, essentially that poison would have killed him. So that shows you how far Kara goes to stay in the shadows. So that's interesting that you get that little tidbit right there. And I like how even though he realized he's been poisoned, even though he realizes that he's been betrayed, Garashi still takes his own life. And that really goes back to, you know, Kara's whole purpose, which I can't spoil because a lot of you guys are anime only, so I can't necessarily spoil that. But people that read the manga, they know in particular what Kara is essentially going for in the end game and what they're giving the people in exchange, what the leader of Kara is giving people in exchange for actually helping him. So I like this right here. I like this. I like that he believed in the message so much that he took his own life. So this is gonna be a nice tonal shift. Now I want to go ahead and address next week's episode based on the episode preview, because I can already tell some people and say, oh my god, like we got this awesome episode this week and next week's just gonna be another random filler episode. No, this is all part of the same arc, and even though it's Boruto and them going on a mission, you're thinking that they're going on a mission looking for some missing person. This still has ties in with Kara. What this episode right here shows you is that any person can be an outer member, and a simple mundane mission could have ties to Kara and you won't even realize it. And so that's what next week's episode and the next few episodes are going to be showing you, because next week's episode is going to start off a chain reaction. So I just want you guys to keep that in mind. Don't write off next week's episode. It's a chain reaction. It's one thing after another. This is one of those times where Boruto stumbles onto something that he's not prepared for. So overall, I thought this was a very good introduction arc. I thought that this was very much worth the wait. So my episode question to you guys is, what do you guys think about how they handled the outer member in this episode, and how do you guys feel about them taking their time to flesh out the members of Kara? Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. But as always, guys, if you like anything I had to say, don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. Have an awesome day, guys.